Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the HealthForce podcast. I am your host, Fran Ramsden. Please do us a favor. Check out our website, ramsdenelitefitness.com. ramsdenelitefitness.com. You will love the latest research tab at the top. Is the compilation of all of our material, articles, videos, and podcasts. You can filter for category on the sidebar, supplements, nutrition, exercise, personal, you name it. It's there. Man, I'm just in a good spot today. Very, very happy. Good mood. It's Monday. I know a lot of people really hate Mondays, usually because they have to go back to a job that they really don't like. I am very, very blessed to come here. I'm able to do our podcast every single Monday. I love it. It's the perfect way to start the week, get back into the grind, and get focused up for business in the health and fitness realm. And I'm just very, very gracious that I have an audience and that you all enjoy this podcast and program. Before we get into today's topic, I wanted to take just 60 seconds here and have you all please check out our YouTube page, Ramsden Elite Fitness, and hit the subscribe button. We are launching a brand new YouTube TV series. It's going to be called Inside the Den. Inside the Den is going to be essentially a vlog, if you know what that is, about our business and the inner workings of kind of the things that I'm dealing with on a daily basis in the health and fitness industry. So that's going to hit a multitude of audiences. First, those that are intrigued by health and fitness in general, to learn more about our methods, our procedures, the way we treat clients. You'll actually be able to hear conversations with real clients that we have regarding their diet, their workout plans. You'll watch us in action, train people. So from that angle, you'll get more information and are going to see exactly what we do with our paying clientele. And that'll all be on YouTube, again, for free. It's just free content that we're pushing out. The second audience that will be interested is those that are intrigued by business. Part of the reason why I'm doing this is for selfish reasons. I want to have some sort of history, a log of how our company takes off and grows from today to the next maybe 2 or 3 years or 5 years down the road. I really want to see that development, and it's going to be cool to look back and see some of the action steps that we took that you could almost give credit to for growth. I think that's going to be really, really cool. So if you're somebody that's entrepreneurial by nature, if you like to if you like business and you like some of the behind-the-scenes stuff, we are going to be filming some business development meetings with other local businesses, with other individuals that either already work with Ramsden Elite Fitness or that are on our radar that we're talking to, negotiating to. You'll be able to see all that stuff too, and then get to see like our team meetings, some behind-the-scenes strategizing. Of course, we're not going to reveal the good stuff, and we're not going to reveal everything, but you are going to see. You are going to get that insight. It's going to be like a fly on the wall. So the final reason why we're doing this is it is going to be entertainment. I am very aware of kind of the social landscape that we currently are in when we talk like marketing. I think marketing is something that we don't consume if we know it's marketing. We only consume it if it's something that we actually find value in. And that's where a lot of companies screw up, is they go for this, what we call hard selling, right? Where they're trying to force you to watch it and force you to buy and just spam you with like emails. Like we're very adverse to that. And I think the future is more so YouTube and Netflix, these streaming services, smart devices, and no one's going to, people are no longer going to check in every Wednesday night to Fox, the Fox series 24 at 9 p.m. I can't wait. Oh, I can't wait. Like, we're getting so far away from that because that's requiring you to tune in on your time, right? Like, that's making you stop everything you're doing in your life. 9 p.m., you're going to be on that TV series' time. It's their schedule. Whereas these streaming services such as Netflix and YouTube, you're going to sit down and watch this whenever you want, whenever you have time. There will be a release schedule. Episodes will come out Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Eventually, once we get rolling here, that's every week. Like, we're not going to take weeks off. Like, we're going to get very, very consistent at it every single Monday, Wednesday, Friday. But like, maybe you're busy during the week and you have to watch all 3 episodes on Saturday morning. I mean, they're 5 to 15 minutes tops per episode. So you're able to binge watch it just like a Netflix series. So that has me highly intrigued. And I hate to say it, but people, like, we like reality TV almost. Like, there's a reason that's a real thing. I think I know when it first came out, everybody kind of laughed at it. But think back to like my childhood days, like MTV, Real World, and Road Rules, all these things that pretty much just follow people, like Survivor TV series. I was a big fan of as a kid. We like it. We, as humans, enjoy it. So there is going to be that component to it. So please, if you haven't done so yet, subscribe to our YouTube page. That way you get the alerts when we drop our first 3 episodes. We are queuing them up, man. We are ready to get going, and we will launch them this week. Our first 3 episodes of Inside the Den. All right, enough of that. Into our podcast today, we're looking at ketosis and low carbohydrate diets versus high carbohydrate diets or moderate carbohydrate diets or anything that really allows for the intake of carbohydrates. So, to set the stage some here, it's super popular right now to be in keto. That's a big buzzword. We have advocates for the ketosis diets that they make it out like it's a Superman diet. Like it's like this fantastic thing that's far superior than anything else in the world, and that if you're not doing it, you're missing out and losing out. So there's that. And I want to start by reading an article by Dr. David Perlmutter, one of the biggest advocates for ketosis, and he has a book. He is the author of Grain Brain. Have not read it because to me it sounds stupid and silly, but there you have it. I'm fair to everybody. Just from his website, drperlmutter.com. This article is called Keep Yourself in Ketosis. When talking about a grain brain lifestyle and the very similar ketogenic diet, it's frequently mentioned that we are aiming to keep our bodies in ketosis. However, if you're new to my work, it may be that you're not exactly sure what ketosis is or why we should be worrying about getting our body into this state. Allow me to explain. Ketones are a special type of fat that can stimulate the pathways that enhance the growth of new neural networks in the brain. A ketogenic diet is one that is high in fats, and this diet has been a tool of researchers for years, used notably in a 2005 study on Parkinson's patients, finding an improvement in symptoms after just 28 days. The improvements were on par with those made possible via medication and brain surgery. Other research has shown the ketogenic diet to be remarkably effective in treating some forms of epilepsy and even brain tumors. Ketones do more than just that, though. They increase glutathione, a powerful brain-productive antioxidant. Ketones facilitate the production of mitochondria, one of the most important actors in the coordinated production that is the human body, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. So, hold on, stop. I'm going to interject. We already see it, right? Oh my God, it cures tumors. Oh my God, it cures epilepsy. Oh my God, it cures Parkinson's. It's just a tip of the iceberg. There's so much more. This is, oh my God, the best thing. See, we're already getting the drama. We're getting the, look, they have to do this. It generates excitement. It's almost a form of marketing, right? It's pulling on emotions. It's pulling on your heartstrings. It's telling you that, oh my God, this cures everything. And, I am being a little facetious. He didn't say it cures these diseases, but he's positioning himself in a way that would be the takeaway message from the average individual that reads this article, is that they're going to come away and think that keto, gets rid of brain tumors. And that's not the whole story. That's definitely not the case. I think it's almost irresponsible to kind of make statements like this. And if it weren't for technicalities of language, Dr. Perlmutter would be in big trouble for the most part. I think that we would want to hold him accountable for saying this sort of stuff. But because he didn't come out and say, look, it cures it, he can kind of escape off. Let's continue. Only just like 2 more paragraphs here. Our bodies are said to enter ketosis at the point when blood sugar levels are low and liver glycogen are no longer available to produce glucose as a fuel for cellular energy production. At this point, not only is the body doing the natural thing of burning off fat, it's also empowering up the brain with a super efficient fuel. We can start ourselves into ketosis with a brief fast, allowing our body to quickly burn through the carbs that are in our system and turn to fat for fuel. A ketogenic diet is one that derives around 80% or more of its calories from fat, rest from carbs and protein. And then he says, please refer to more of our articles. So I think that's actually a decent, overall encompassing, contextual article that gives you the insight as for the ketosis advocates. That's literally this is what they believe, that it's the far superior diet, that it almost cures or at least lowers the symptoms of disease. It makes your brain run on super fuel. You burn through so much more fat. Yada yada, on and on it goes. I'm going to switch gears here, and I want to and look, here's the reason why I'm just going to read that one article to set up. Today, I'm in a good mood, first off, so I don't feel like increasing my blood pressure and, getting angry today. But I could pick a gazillion articles from Google. If you go to Google and type in, why is the keto diet the best? You will have amateurs galore that write articles similar to similar to that one we just read, but like way more dramatic, way more sensational. And look, if you're a regular listener to this podcast, you understand what's out there. You understand how these people operate. So I'm not going to sit here and waste 15 minutes reading articles from people that aren't qualified to speak on it. And even the experts in keto, again, we've picked on Gary Taubes enough. The guy, I'm going to give him a break this week. But they all speak the same. They all talk the same. They act like they're far superior, both mentally and, they have this, I have an aura about me. I'm so right on this. Why does nobody else believe me? They're fools. Oh, my God, everybody's doubting me. It's the same old. And, quite frankly, it's boring at this point. I'm going to move into something that's not boring. At least it shouldn't be, because you should find this highly interesting. We're going to look at some research studies. Yes, research studies. I will make sure my reading voice is on point so that you don't snooze off. And I'm just kidding. Look, these are important. I know nobody, who else do you listen to either on YouTube or podcasting on iTunes that's going to sit here and read PubMed stuff to you and try to get you this information? And the answer is not really anybody, because it's boring. That's the quote-unquote boring. The people that are for keto, they're exciting. Then that picture's been painted, and I'm here to reverse the crap out of that. So here we are. Study called Effects of a Low-Carbohydrate Diet versus Low-Fat Diet on Metabolic Risk Factors. Meta-analysis of randomized controlled clinical trials. Done by Hugh et al. H-U et al. So look, we're going to get into this. Let's look at the low-carbohydrate diet, which is what the keto is, versus a lower-fat diet on these different risk factors of metabolic disease. I'm going to read the abstract, and look, when I say low-carb diet, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's a keto. It's one of these things that people push out there. Just go on keto, and then they give you these arbitrational lines of what actual keto is. If your diet's 10% carbs, it's not keto. It's too much. It's got to be 2%. It's got to be 5%. They'll give you different guidelines. But the overall message, I think, is still the same. It's low carbohydrate intake, high fat, and then in most cases, it's low protein. There are different versions that are moderate protein intake. Those variables are flexible. But the overall premise is that carbohydrates are bad for you and that you should not eat a lot of those. All right? Let's move forward. The effects of a low-carbohydrate diet, which now in what they're classifying as less than 45% of total energy from carbohydrates, which isn't really keto. Actually, it's not keto, but when you look at the average population, that is lower carb for what the average person intakes, which I would say is probably 60, 75% people are consuming as carbohydrate. They're going to take that versus low-fat diets, which are below 30%. And again, there's a lot lower percentage fat diets than 30, but for this, it makes sense. It works. They're going to, let me just start over. The effects of low-carbohydrate diets versus low-fat diets on metabolic risk factors were compared in a meta-analysis of randomized controlled trials, 23 trials from multiple countries with a total of 2,788 participants met the eligibility criteria. I'm going to skip on down here to the results. The flow of studies in our meta-analysis is depicted in Figure 1. From 785 potentially relevant references, 503 records remained after duplicates between databases were eliminated, and 406 articles were eliminated after reviewing titles and abstracts. Again, they're just telling you kind of how different studies got accepted into this and how many were eliminated and not included in their analysis. The characteristics of the 23 randomized controlled trials are presented in Table 1. All trials were parallel except for one trial that had a factorial design. Trial participants were usually not blinded to their assignment because of the nature of the intervention. Most interventions provided dietary instruction, leading food buying and preparation to the participants. The goal dietary nutritional composition varied across the studies, while carbohydrate consumption ranged from 4% to 45%. And if you take the mean of that, it's 23%. So that's what they consider low carbohydrate. So again, when you're doing a review study, you're going to have a lot of different studies in here. I guess, and then for this one, they use 23 different ones. So to be classified as low carbohydrate in this, it was between 4% and 45% of your daily intake came from carbs. And so if you were to take the mean of that, it'd be 23% per low carbohydrate study. And fat ranging from 10% to 30% with a mean of 26% of energy in the low fat group. Self-reported mean energy intake weighed by trial sample sizes were similar for both diets at approximately 2,000 calories. So again, if you look at, and the reason why I'm going with this study is because they're controlling as best they can for carb versus fat. So an average of 23, a mean, and it's a weighted mean of 23% for low carbohydrate groups and a weighted mean of 26% for fat. The low fat group is, when it comes to percentage of diet, those are comparable, 23 to 26%. All right. Okay, let's see here. All right. Down to the discussion section. In the present meta-analysis of randomized controlled trials comparing the low-carbohydrate diet with low-fat diets, we found that both diets were equally effective at reducing body weight and waist circumference. Both diets reduced participants' blood pressures, total HDLs to the total cholesterol ratios, total cholesterol in general, LDL cholesterol, triglycerides, blood glucose, serum insulin levels, and raised HDL cholesterol. However, participants on low-carbohydrate diets had greater increases in HDL cholesterol and greater decreases in triglycerides, but experienced less reduction in total and LDL cholesterol as compared with persons on low-fat diets. Makes sense. These findings have important clinical and public health implications. Over the past several decades, low-fat diets have been recommended to the public for weight loss, primarily because of their beneficial effects on metabolic risk factors. Our studies suggest that low-carbohydrate diets might provide an alternative approach for weight reduction without worsening metabolic risk factors. So, if you look at that, does that conclusion that we just read, does that really give you one way or the other about keto, or low-carbohydrate diets versus low-fat diets? Is that, to me, all it's suggesting is that these diets are comparable to one another. They both produce similar effects. If you consume more healthy fat, it's going to affect your cholesterol in a more beneficial manner, which is no surprise, which is why you should consume a lot of omega fats and supplement with fish oil. There's reasons for that. And it's suggesting, hey, look, maybe low carbohydrates, can work for some of these metabolic factors against that. I'm going to move on here. And that was from 2012, by the way. That was from 2012. Now, here's one from 2017. So because this one's from 2017, we don't have access to the full slate. I believe on PubMed, it has to be a year before it's released to the public, I think, and I'm pretty sure that's the way it works. But this is from 2017 from one of my favorites, Dr. Kevin Hall. I believe his name's Kevin. That'd be bad if it wasn't Kevin, wouldn't it? Dr. Hall. Obesity, energetics, body weight regulation, and the effects of diet composition. It is Dr. Kevin Hall. I'm messing around, folks. I'm messing around. All right. I'm going to just read the abstract because that's the only thing that's available to me. It says, weight changes are accompanied by imbalances between calorie intake and expenditure. This fact is often misinterpreted to suggest that obesity is caused by gluttony and sloth and can be treated by simply advising people to eat less and move more. Hey, man, that's what I say all the time. However, various components of energy balance are dynamically interrelated, and weight loss is resisted by counterbalancing physiological processes. While low-carbohydrate diets have been suggested to partially subvert these processes by increasing energy expenditure and promoting fat loss, our meta-analysis of 32 controlled feeding studies with isocaloric substitution of carbohydrate for fat found that both energy expenditure and fat loss were greater with lower fat diets. We review the components of energy balance and mechanisms acting to resist weight loss in the context of static setting point and set point models of body weight regulation, with the set point model being most Whatever, done. So, again, I want to reread this one part. They had a meta-analysis, 32 controlled feeding studies with isocaloric substitution of carbs and fats. So what that means is a controlled feeding study is where the scientists or the researchers give the participants their food. You don't let the people go out and shop on their own. You don't just tell them, well, hey, look, just eat a diet like this, and then, who knows what they actually do. This is controlled. Very, very expensive, but obviously more bang for your buck. I mean, this is going to be a lot more relative towards, this is going to be more trusting data, in my opinion, than something that you just say, okay, well, here's what you're supposed to eat, go ahead. And they controlled for calories, which is super important. That, let's just use the number 2,000 because it's easy. Both low carbohydrates and low fat diets, they both had 2,000 calories, the exact same. So the only thing that we're changing is kind of the macronutrients portion of it. So, and you see their findings, right? You see their findings. Let me read that one more time, their actual findings. We found, what the hell's going on here? I'm going to move on. Let's go to, I have StephenGuyenet.com. Stephen Guyenet, a great PhD of mine that I like to go to. He has an article titled The Meta-Analysis Impact of Carbohydrates versus Fat Calories on Energy Expenditure and Body Fatness. So he's taken that same study by Dr. Kevin Hall, and he's going to give his own commentary onto it. Let's hop into it. So here, he sets it up. It says, sometimes a meta-analysis is just what the doctor ordered to inoculate us against the shortcomings of our own cognition. When a topic has been studied extensively and it has produced many studies of varying quality, this lends itself to incorrect conclusions because we find studies to support almost any belief. This is problematic because we naturally tend to gravitate toward evidence that reinforces pre-existing beliefs and away from evidence that challenges beliefs. This is called confirmation bias. This phenomenon affects all of us and has to be actively managed if we want to arrive at reliable knowledge. Systematically examining a body of evidence and integrating it mathematically is a useful tool for combating this bias. A new meta-analysis examines the effect of carbohydrate versus fat calories on energy expenditure and body fatness, giving us the most objective view of the question to date. And again, that is a perfect contextual setup where we see it with these keto guys, the fanatics, the sugar demonizers. They have confirmation bias like out the wazoo, where they form their opinions, they form their lifestyle, they form their careers around a specific belief. And so in order to perpetuate that so that they remain both in existence and so that they have money, is they have to reject any sort of evidence that comes contrary to their own beliefs, and then at the same time cherry-picking data to support their own beliefs. And I think we all do this to a certain extent. My job, though, when it comes to health and fitness, is to be as objective as possible, which is why I don't tie myself down to a certain set point of beliefs like these other individuals do. And the reason we use Gary Taubes so much is because he is the exact antithesis of what I stand for and what our company, Rams and Elite Fitness, stands for. Is we're not idealists, right? Like, I don't go out there with an agenda. I don't go out with a point of view and then have to do everything around that point of view. I am making up our opinions, our philosophies, our strategies, our points of view. I'm creating that from analyzing and looking at data to see what's actually going on. It's not the other way around. And I think that's so important for all of us to understand when you get into anything with health and fitness. Confirmation bias, depending on the source that you're listening to or reading from, they're going to have massive confirmation bias. I mean, it's all about sensationalism, marketing. It's easier to sell something when you're super passionate about one topic, as opposed to saying, like, look, here's what the research says. This is why I support this. So, the study recently, Dr. Kevin Hall and Dr. Go published what I believe is the first meta-analysis of controlled feeding studies that compared diets of equal calorie content but differing in carbohydrate and fat content. They only considered studies in which all food was provided by researchers and protein intake was held constant between the diets. Their outcomes were energy expenditure and body fatness. So look at that. The way that that's even set up is brilliant. They only include studies where the laboratory or the researchers gave the food to the participants. Only studies that had the same calories for both groups, low carb versus low fat, that kept protein intake constant. That didn't differ in that either. It's super important. So the only really variable that you're looking at that's changing is going to be carb or fat. And then the thing that they're going to look at, the outcome is going to be energy expenditure, how much fuel is being burned off, because that's a big argument from people that are on keto is that, look, well, our bodies run efficiently and they burn off energy, so if you consume a high-fat diet, you'll burn off more fat. So energy expenditure is important to monitor, and so is body fatness, body composition. So here are the results. They identified 28 studies that met the criteria for energy expenditure. Combining the data of the 28 studies, they found that calorie-matched diets predominating in fat versus carbohydrate have almost identical effects, but higher carbohydrate diets do lead to a slightly higher energy expenditure. This difference was statistically significant, but of little medical or practical relevance since it only amounted to 26 calories a day. The slightly higher energy expenditure is consistent with the fact that the metabolism of carbohydrate is slightly less efficient than the metabolism of fat, meaning that a bit more energy is wasted. So, contrary to that point that, if I eat fat, I'll burn off more fat, your body does make more efficient use of breaking down fats into energy, as opposed to carbohydrates. So what they're saying is your body has to actually spend more energy, spend more calories to change carbohydrate into the correct, the different cell structures that it needs, with the different nutrients, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that's kind of where there's 26 extra. Again, not real practical for us for fat loss. Examining the data, the paper's result is not hard to believe because only 8 of the 28 studies reported that low carb diets led to a higher energy expenditure than high carbohydrate diets. And among those 8, the results were only statistically significant in 4. So in contrast, 20 studies reported higher energy expenditure with high carb diets, and that was statistically significant in 14. One can choose individual studies that support either belief, but the overall evidence suggests that the relative carbohydrate and fat content of the diet has little impact on energy expenditure. Again, super critical point. Anybody can cherry pick a damn study. It's super easy. Here, I'll even tell you how you can do it. Google, Google.com, and you can type in that says, study supporting keto diets. Go ahead, type that in. Here come the results. Pick your favorite and read it. There you go. You've now cherry picked for that. It's instead of doing that, instead of operating like that, it's more important to look at the overall body of research. And if 75% of studies show one thing and only 25% show the other, there's a reasonable proposition, I guess, or point of view that you should go with the majority of research on that topic. And that's kind of what I do. I mean, that's what I do. I look at the overall body of research. Like, if I want to find a diet that says keto is the greatest thing since sliced bread, I can find it. I'm just looking at overall and realizing that it's not as great as everybody pumps it up to be. I'm not selling keto stuff, so I don't really care about selling. Onward to body fatness. So that was just energy expenditure. That was just, the claim that, which diet burns off more calories naturally. And to me, they're really the same. Onward to body fatness, Hall and Dr. Go identified 20 controlled feeding studies that reported changes in body fatness on equal calorie diets differing in fat and carbohydrate content. Echoing the energy expenditure finding, they found that diets predominating in carbohydrate or fat have similar effects on body fatness. Yet, the higher carbohydrate diets do lead to a slightly greater loss of fat per calorie, amounting to a 16 gram per day difference. This is actually a larger difference than one would predict from the difference in energy expenditure, which would only be 2.8 grams per day. So here's the discussion part. Given this new meta-analysis, I think it's now fairly safe to say that in a general sense, equal calories from fat and carbohydrates have similar effects on energy expenditure and body fatness, with a possible small metabolic advantage for higher carbohydrate diets. This doesn't imply very much about the real-world effectiveness of a low fat and low carb diet because it doesn't factor in free living calorie intake. But it is relevant to certain popular theories about how those diets work. The upshot is that you shouldn't expect altering the carbohydrate to fat ratio of your diet to work magic on your metabolic rate, but rather you should choose a diet that controls your calorie intake effectively and sustainably. Man, I tell you what, man, my man Stefan Guillenet is killing it. Again, a great point. And at the end of today's podcast, I will give you guys action steps to figure out some more diet tips for you guys. I love doing that. If you want that now, there's a podcast we did, and it's called How to Form the Best Diet Ever. You can go right to our website, ramsleyfitness.com. Latest research tab, filter for podcasts, nutrition on the subcategory. And you will find that how to form the best diet ever. That's practical action steps. 1, 2, 3, like here's what you do. A great podcast that we did. But again, at the end of today's podcast, I'll give you some more tips, some more insights, some more action steps for you. But this is dead on. This is dead on. When things are controlled for calories, they produce similar results, which again fuels the theory, which is now widely accepted, regardless of what people on Facebook say. Calorie is, in general, talking very basic, a calorie is a calorie, which means that if you are controlling for calories, if that's your number one factor when it comes to a diet for weight gain and for weight loss, that is predominantly the number one thing that you need to focus on. You have to in order to ensure results. Doesn't matter what the other stuff, where the calories come from, necessarily. I'm not advocating for an ice cream diet like our friend Anthony Howard Crow. And by the way, he's not advocating for it. He's simply doing it right now to prove a point. But again, that's not an optimal thing. That's not an optimal thing to do. But in general, very basic, calories is the number one factor you should control for. And, when it comes to carbohydrates and fats and different ratios, you got to figure out what works best for you. Don't let some goof on Facebook or YouTube tell you what ratio to do. Feel it out a little bit. What foods do you crave for? Do you enjoy carbohydrate foods? Do you enjoy breads and things like that, and grains and pasta and rice? Or do you enjoy things like bacon and eggs and nuts and seeds, red meats? You have to work that out. And there's a balance there. Do what I do. I do both. I do moderate carb, moderate fat, high protein, and that's for both gaining weight and cutting. I just changed my calorie goal. It is no longer, back to the article, it is no longer tenable to suggest that carbohydrate per se reduces energy expenditure and causes the accumulation of body fat independent of calorie intake. This idea was never very well rooted in evidence, but now that we have a meta-analysis, it is clear that it resulted from confirmation bias. And that's a claim that people on keto say, that, if you consume carbohydrates, you spike insulin, and oh my God, you store more body fat that way, and even if you control for calories, the carbohydrate insulin model, that's what he's referring to here. And again, it is defeated. This meta-analysis leaves many questions unanswered. It is the same effect observed during weight gain, weight maintenance, weight loss, and weight loss maintenance? Or could the ratio of carbs to fat matter in these scenarios? Is the effect observed equally at moderate macronutrient ratios and at the extremes? We have individual studies that address the questions, but no meta-analysis yet. Hall and Go's paper is not just a meta-analysis, it's a review of obesity, energetics, body weight regulation, and their relationship to diet composition. It is hands down the single most informative paper I've encountered for explaining the relationship of energy intake and expenditure to body fatness, and the big picture view of how the body's energy control systems work. It comes from a research group that is at the leading edge of these questions. It took me years of study to formulate the high-level perspective that you can now get from an hour of reading this study. Stefan Guinet, my man. So let's get to these action steps for you guys. Let's wrap up this podcast today because, look, I'm not interested in beating a dead horse. If you after hearing some of the stuff today think that keto is still the only diet that anybody should ever do, it's the greatest thing, you get so many more benefits, hey man, hop to it, have fun. I'm not going to convince you. But here we go. Ready for this? Action steps. You have to self-identify your preferred food sources, whether it's carbohydrate or fat. And again, you don't have to choose. I do both. Like a lot of the best tasting food, the most palatable food, will have both carbohydrates and fat and no protein essentially. Think your sweets, think chips. Things like that are going to be high carb, high fat, low protein. But in terms of like healthier, quote unquote, food items, is there a preference that your body naturally tends to have? Do you run more efficiently on something? Do you have better workouts on higher carb or higher fat? Or do you have less cravings on low carb versus low fat? Map it out. Map it out. Try them both. I mean, look, I've tried everything. This is what I do for a living. Like I've tried a high carb, low fat diet. I struggle because I have a lot of dairy and I like to have full fat dairy. Fat-free dairy doesn't tend to have enough flavor for me. So it's harder to consume. I'm a big advocate of eggs. At least I try to do 3 times a day, 3 eggs a day. And so when you are on a low-fat diet and I consume, 18 to 20 grams of fat for eggs alone, I mean, I'm in trouble. Now the rest of the day, like on a low-fat diet, I'm supposed to consume like 20 to 30 grams of fat. Now I'm in trouble. You know what I mean? Just from the eggs. So that's why it really wasn't for me. Low carb was even worse. Low carb was awful. And it could be explained. I mean, low carb for me was just even under 100 grams a day, which, look, keto people will laugh at and say, oh, good one, man. I'm under 25 grams a day. I'm so cool. So even under 100 grams, that's when I really started to begin to struggle. Anywhere from 100 to 150, I'm cool on. Like if I have 110 grams a day, 120, 130 grams of carbs a day, completely fine. Completely fine. No real adverse effects. But once I start trying to, stay under 83, 87, 62, like I'm in trouble big time. And so what ends up happening to me is I crave carbohydrates, like way worse. So like when I go low fat, I don't really crave fat foods. I'm all right. It's just hard to make sure the foods that I'm eating fit within the macro guidelines. But when I go low carb, I actually legit crave carbs, and to the point where it's tough. Like, it's not easy to resist that. And it's just simple things like having a freaking English muffin or jelly. Like, I'm not even talking about pizza or French fries. Like, I'm talking small game stuff, fruit. That's what I really, really want. And it's easily explained. Your body runs off of glucose. It does. That's the primary method to operate right now. And so when you restrict carbohydrates, you're artificially restricting glucose. Your body runs through the stored glycogen, runs through the stored carbohydrate, and now is turning fat into glucose to fuel the body, or they're creating ketones depending on what's going on, or they're breaking down muscle tissue for glucose. But it wants more just naturally in your food intake. It wants glucose. It wants carbs. So that's where it's giving you that feedback through cravings, telling you, go eat carbs, dude. And so for me, I didn't particularly enjoy that. And I've done it for an extended period of time. So it's not that, oh my God, it's the carb flu sickness. You just got to go through it. Be a man. No, I did it 7, 10, 14, 21 days. It was the same damn thing. And after 21 days, I still wanted freaking an English muffin and jelly on it. So again, it just wasn't for me. But I learned it through that process. So I encourage you, try out the keto if you really, really, really want to. I mean, go for it. I'm just telling you right now, it's super restrictive and it's super hard, and you will crave food. It's not fun. Same goes for low fat for the most part. You might not get as intense cravings, but a lot of your favorite food's going to have fat in it. Like goodbye avocados, goodbye guacamole, goodbye butter, goodbye eggs, goodbye nuts. So, I mean, for me, the most common sense thing to do is to have a moderate carb, moderate fat day. And so here's how I operate. In breakfast, I have my eggs, and I usually have bacon, and it turns into a high-fat meal. There may be some butter in there, a high-fat meal, probably in the range of 25 to 30 grams of fat just from that breakfast. Well, then what I do is I switch gears, and then for the rest of the day, I really don't consume that much fat. And I end up at the end of the day with maybe 50 to 60 grams of fat, about 180, 200 grams of protein, and then the rest of it filled up with carbohydrates. And so then I'll switch gears, and then maybe I'll have rice and chicken. I'll have couscous, which is great, and fish. I'll have sandwich. I'll use like bread thins or wraps. I'll have fruit. And then usually for dinner or the last meal, I pull up my FitnessPal app and I analyze my diet to this point and figure out what I have left over and create a meal that fits in with the calorie goal. So like if I have a day where for like maybe I'm on the run and I have to have a lot of bars or something for whatever reason, and at the end of the day I have virtually like no fat, no carbs, and I only have protein left, well then guess what's for dinner? It's going to be vegetables and meat, or it's going to be a salad with grilled chicken on it. Low carb, low fat, high protein meal to finish the day off. If I end up the day with a lot of fat left and a lot of protein left, well then I'll have steak. I'll have steak and vegetables and put olive oil on the vegetables. Get a high fat meal to finish the day. If it's the opposite, if I have no fat left, bunch of carbs and bunch of protein left, well then maybe I'm having potato, maybe like homemade fries or something in the oven, or like a baked potato or mashed potato without a healthier version of it without all the fat and butter and cream. Or I'm having rice, or I'm having the couscous, or I'm having a sandwich. And I have, a meat choice with it. I mean, that's how I operate. It's that basic. It really is. It's just, examine, record, make rational decisions. So I try not to be fanatical and try to get too deep into this on either side. So look, if you're looking at keto versus high carbohydrate diet, you're thinking of it all wrong. I implore you, look at it as a calorie game and figure out the macronutrients based upon your preferences. The only thing that I really, really, really strongly advise is that you consume high amounts of protein, close to 1 gram of 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. So if you're 150 pounds, try to get 150 grams of protein. The research on that is very clear. That'll help you build more muscle when you're in the gym, and it actually leads to increased feeling of fullness since protein takes some effort to digest. It's also palatable. We all like chicken. We like meat. We like beef. We like fish. It tastes good, and it actually can aid in fat loss by preserving muscle tissue. So we hope you found this enjoyable podcast on keto versus high carb diets. Head over to ramsandleafitness.com. Latest research tab, and on our YouTube page, Rams and Leaf Fitness. Subscribe so that you stay up to date on Inside the Den releases. Thank you all. Love you all.